One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. Whatever stage you're in the continuum of abuse, whether you're currently cohabitating, trying to figure out if what you're experiencing is abuse, looking for a safe way to exit, trying to heal, or navigating post-separation abuse, it's very common to feel lost. Most victims aren't aware of the resources available, or they can't access the ones they do know about. My guest today, Anne, is here to change that. She's built an AI technology specifically designed for domestic abuse, putting critical guidance and information into the hands of the people who need it the most. Here's Anne. Hi, Anne. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome, and thank you for joining me on One in Three.
Thank you so much for having me, Ingrid. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes. So before we get into our topic, could you just give a little background on yourself so we can all get to know you some?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Anne. I'm an urban homesteader in Denver, Colorado, here with my family. What gets me out of bed every morning is working to really challenge systems, interrogate, if you will, the systems that are failing women and children. So that has had me working in evidence-based maternity care. That's had me working in, childhood education, and now in this space of really trying to pair the evidence of what we know about domestic violence and coercive control and unhealthy relationships, really trying to give people who are experiencing that the access to the resources and the support that they need. Because right now, this is a huge failing in our system that doesn't only cost a lot of women their lives, but costs far more people the quality of life.
Absolutely. And this, I'm so excited. I'm like fumbling over words because I'm really, really excited to jump into this topic because actually, I take that back. There are a lot of resources out there. They're just not accessible to everyone out there. And that's either financially not accessible or location-wise not accessible. And that makes a very scary experience for victims and survivors because they think they know what to do, but they're not sure what to do, and there's really nobody to bounce that off of.
This is true. There are so many incredible resources available, many of them put together by folks who've had their own lived experience and who are trying to fill the gaps that they themselves experienced. But you're right that, they're there, but they're not equally accessible. They're not equally distributed even, right? Like if we're talking about rurality and what might be available to a specific location. But one of the access issues is this requirement for self-identification as a victim or as a survivor in order to utilize those services. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of stigma, self-blame, victim blaming, certainly as well, around having ended up in an unhealthy or even dangerous relationship. People can't access resources that are behind a wall that says domestic violence unless they feel like, well, that's what happened to me, unless they self-identify in that way. There's a lot of reasons that all of those incredible resources can be hard for people to get at the right time, right? As early as possible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, and actually a lot of people I personally know, they turn to the internet. They Google, this just happened, or they go to ChatGPT and say, hey, this happened, what's going on? And they're asking advice from sources that may not have a strong domestic violence library, I guess, to pull from.
Or so first was the Google. When people Google their experiences, when it's not particularly dynamic, like it's, AI generated responses, it's really easy for people to say, well, okay, I read on that website that physical violence is this, this, and this, but he pinched me. He didn't slap me. So it probably wasn't. It wasn't abuse then. It wasn't physical violence then. There's this barrier to people accessing supportive resources when they're not dynamic, right? Because people want to believe that they did not end up in that situation. And then, when we're talking about using something like generative AI, ChatGPT is actually doing a pretty darn decent job in that space. There's some recent research that came out in March that, 91% of the time it was fed information about an abusive relationship. It identified it as such. So we're not going to poo-poo on ChatGPT in that regard, but they don't, they're a generalist tool, and they don't have, they're not building in what we call an AI vertical, right? Like, we are making a product for a very specific use. That means it's highly trained in that regard, and that all the kind of the back-end engineering and everything that's going on is trained to that specific use case. And certainly that's not true of ChatGPT, as well as there's some privacy concerns with ChatGPT as well.
Yes, and I think people are just becoming aware now of that privacy concern. So let's talk about your technology.
So Aimee Says is the name of our company, and Aimee is our AI. And she's built in this survivor first space, like I said, in this vertical of, everything that we're doing is to serve the specific and unique needs of people everywhere from that first red flag, like I went on a weird date, or, I'm thinking about going on a date with this person, but I'm not really comfortable with this message that was sent to me, all the way through, the very unfortunate rock bottom. I'm afraid I'm going to lose custody of my children, or the court has removed, my ability to visit the children based on false allegations because I claimed that there was abuse in the relationship. So we're really building out in that space. Or even the, I'm co-parenting with my abuser, and that's its own special nightmare of post-separation abuse. But we took into consideration the things that something like a general AI is never going to do, that they can't do. Privacy is a huge one of those. We never train on user data. We're not reading the things that people submit to Aimee. We're not reading what Aimee is saying back to them, because that privacy and confidentiality is both important to the survivor and also in the legal context. Whether or not you actually waived confidentiality because you're using an open model, something like ChatGPT. And then building inside of the kind of legal prep space, there's some additional protections that people have, because, if you create documentation or, your timelines, et cetera, in the context of preparing for future litigation, there are often some additional protections and privacy for that work that are afforded by your state statute. But we get to do really exciting things inside of that space. So, if you're talking with ChatGPT, you're likely to get a really pretty high quality conversation about the dynamics that are present in your relationship. If you have the same conversation with Aimee, she's extracting from that pieces of information that she's putting on a timeline, that she's labeling with the different types of abuse that are present, that she's going to be able to export for you, that you're going to be able to add to a digital binder that she creates in case you need to go to court. So it's really all of those kind of additional layers that my colleagues and I spent in crazy amounts of time thinking through and developing, testing, launching, and getting into the hands of folks who really need it.
Yeah. So there's two different, I guess, tiers. You can have the free chat feature, and then there's the paid for services. So let's just start with, there's not a lot more to explain about the chat feature, because I think a lot of people are already familiar with that sort of technology.
Yes. So right now, 40,000 people from 150 plus countries have had just anonymous conversations with Aimee whenever they need. It's entirely free. No data is stored. It disappears. And for many people, that is exactly what is needed. Our AI is trained in coercive control, and what escalates risks, what kind of additional calculations might need to be made, supports that need to be provided in that context that make it a safer, more utilitarian was the word that I'm looking for, tool than just an anonymous chat with ChatGPT. We keep that free and publicly available. We also offer any organization that works with survivors, we can put that free embeddable chat on your website as well, so folks do not have to leave it. It's free for them. It's free for the organization. But we also offer a subscription model. And that allows us to store the information so Aimee remembers you. right? When you come back. And some people, that's it. They just want, every time they have a chat with Aimee, they don't have to re-explain anything. Aimee has a growing kind of body of information about who you are and what you've experienced it, what you need, what your goals are. And then also, all of the kind of data management that is a really unique opportunity of artificial intelligence to tag all of that in the background, label it all, extract key details, put those things on a timeline, and really do the administrative, clerical, a paralegal type work that is incredibly time consuming, re-traumatizing, and expensive, certainly if you're going to have somebody else try to do it for you.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I've played around with it. I've told a few friends who are in some difficult situations and we've looked at it. And what's cool is like how you said, there's like a timeline. So you can start with today and you enter in an event for today and then say, okay, I have a little bit of extra time. Let me go back to 5 years ago. This is what happened 5 years ago. And you can put that in. And it's a lot more organized than like an actual hard copy of a bunch of papers thrown into it. The binder feature is really cool. And like if you're going to go to court for, I don't know, you're talking about custody, time sharing, you can ask Aimee, and correct me if I'm wrong, like we haven't gotten this far in playing with it, but you can say, hey, I'm going to court about my son and whether he can have time, whether there should be more time, whether things should change. And Aimee will pull the documentation that's particular to that situation.
Yes, exactly. So first of all, binders work because people have been doing their due diligence and documenting things as they go. If a brand new user comes on and says, build me a binder, Aimee is building it from what she knows about you and the things you've uploaded and the documents that you have there and the events that she's either documented or that you have. So it's the binder tool is kind of the product benefit of having maintained a consistent relationship with the AI. But you're right. You could be like, well, he hasn't paid, his support in X months, and I want to file for enforcement. You click the binder button. Aimee asks you 2 questions and asks you to name the binder, so you'll be able to identify it next to another one. And then she will, in 30 seconds, pull every chat that you've had about that's related to non-payment, the impact of it, every entry that's in there, the documentation that you've uploaded for that. She'll put it together in a single binder that you can add to, that you can export. You can give it to an attorney. You can use it in your own. If you're pro se, as a self-represented litigant. But instead of you combing through, like you were saying, all those loose pieces of paper, we've got those everywhere. Oh, I'll remember this. I'll just jot it down on a sticky note, and that will be sufficient. She's able to pull all of that together for you. It's an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah. And in terms of documents, you can upload your divorce decree or whatever court documents. You can upload financial documents as well.
Yes. Yeah. It lists all the different file types. She's better at kind of more narrative format. You can't just do a straight Excel spreadsheet particularly well. But you upload those things, you add them to a conversation. So she knows that that's something that you want her to be looking at. And I could upload 6 months of financial records and say, he says he submitted these in discovery. He says that he can't afford to pay me. And she will be like, well, it looks like he spent $16,000 on motorsports, equipment. So perhaps the priorities are an issue, and provide that information to you without you having to comb through it. Certainly orders are a great thing. If you have orders to have in there, then when you have Aimee, writing messages to your ex, you can do it in accordance with the expectations that are outlined in those orders. It's like having, we all kind of want an expert on speed dial. It's a really high stakes place. It's high stakes for us. Like if I make a mistake, I'm going to deal with the consequences. If I make a mistake, I could have to deal with legal consequences, or my child deals with consequences. It's a lot of pressure. And it's really nice to be able to do that with a companion who can see the broader picture, who understands what those goals are. Certainly we want to save people, we save time, money, and mental health. And that's what we've trained Aimee to do.
Yeah. And the more you use her, she gets to know you more. So she knows more of the dynamics, the abuse tactics that are being used, and formulates then an answer. If you go in and say, hey, this happened and I need to communicate with my ex, Aimee will say, well, given this information we know of your ex, these are the potential concerns, and then helps generate
Yes.
an answer.
Right. If you say, I'm concerned that this could escalate or he might have a negative response to this, she knows all of those times you told her and what kind of flavor of escalation he uses. Right. So you can help plan through, is that a risk that, when I do kind of a risk benefit analysis, is it a risk that I do want to take? How can I mitigate those concerns for escalation? She's really a thought partner who, like you said, remembers all of the things that you shared with her. So you don't ever have to go back and explain yourself again.
Right. And then there's even the, okay, you're sending this. Do you want me to help you come up with a response in case that person, does their typical response, how you go about responding to that response, a whole conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Or it's like preparing for live conversations. I'm going to be at student conferences. This is what, has happened in the past. Like, role play with me. What am I going to say if this thing happens? What do I say if he says this? What if he doesn't show up? What should I do? Because there's so much kind of pre-conversation anxiety. Survivors are like, I got caught flat-footed so many times. I'm so anxious and anticipating the next time that happens. I want to do everything that I can to prepare. And it's actually really fun to role play with Aimee in a chat. Be like, okay, if this, then what do I do? Or tell me like 3 things that he could say to me. I don't want to be caught off guard. And really preparing for those moments.
Right. And then you can even use it to anticipate. For instance, I have a friend whose son wants to confront his father. And so we were playing around like, okay, Aimee, the son wants to say this. How can he say it? What should he anticipate? What can his response be to what we're expecting his father's response to be?
Yes. And like, first, Aimee is trained to support adults. So certainly there should be an adult interface to this. Like, how can I support my child who's trying to say, they really want to do this. These are my concerns. How can I support him in this situation? Those are really, really good examples. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I just go and I can talk about abuse. Like, no, really dig in. This is what I'm trying to get to, but I'm concerned about this. How do I think through this? Is there a name for this thing? Because I find myself chewing on it over and over and over. What kind of goals can I set for myself? How do I take care of myself in the context? I feel burnt out. I feel resentful, right? Like, all of the very colorful, rich tapestry of experiences of victimization and survivorship. Those are all areas of exploration and documentation that Aimee's able to go with you.
And it's so, like how we were talking at the beginning, the lack of accessibility to resources. This is something that is very accessible. I've spoken with a lot of coaches and they're fabulous. And I would still recommend, their services. They are really good at what they do. But sometimes those come with a higher price tag, and it's difficult, especially if there's financial abuse involved, which a lot of times there is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to be a coach. This is how I came to this. And people would pay me sums of money that I needed to pay my bills to be able to provide that service, right? Like, we get to charge for our services, but from a human rights perspective, right? We live in a world where people are allowed, specifically in the context of an intimate partnership, because we wouldn't tolerate this from anybody else. The systems would definitely intervene if you hadn't slept with the person before. But the systems, we live in a world that tolerates this ongoing abuse. I mean, many of these people are just being like machine gunned, buried in false accusations and constant harassment. They have needs. Their children have needs that are ever constant, right? They're being harmed actively. So we have these people in this situation, and then we say, okay, but there is support. It's available. It'll cost you $150 an hour, and you will need 11 hours a week of it, right? That's from a human rights perspective, it's unconscionable that we don't have the ability to provide that service for free, right? Like free would really be ideal. But even within a barely, accessible range of, of financial burden, we just it does not exist. And Aimee provides the types of services that did not exist, right? It's really not just duplicating the same kind of services you can get from an advocate or duplicating the same kind of things you can get from a coach. If you have access to those, use them. She is really filling out a space which was just white knuckled by the survivor before, or was just internalized, or was just considered the cost of doing business, with an abusive person. We don't question it. It's just the thing that you have to do. And that constant vigilance, that constant stress is literally killing survivors, right? It's increasing. I'm getting kind of excited here. I hope the mic isn't picking up too much volume.
I'm about to jump in here too.
Right. I'm escalating. I feel myself on the kind of the on-ramp of a freeway here of righteousness. It's killing people. It's increasing their risk of stroke, of cardiovascular, of heart disease, right? Of diabetes, of fibromyalgia, of autoimmune disorders, substance dependency that has a whole host of other potential, physical and mental health implications. CPTSD, anxiety, depression, like increased risk of suicidality. These are all things that are the result of the constant stress that comes from having to white knuckle day to day your existence as a victim, as a survivor through post-separation abuse. And, I'll be darned if I'm going to rest my head on my final pillow at hopefully, a late 90s age, without having done everything that I can to try to stop that.
Yeah. And you are, as a victim, you didn't choose to be abused. An abuser abused you. And then because of that, you are faced with the task of, if you're still in the relationship, safely extracting yourself from that person, healing yourself. And if you have any connections with that person, if you were married, if you have financial commitments with each other, if you have children together, then you go into the world of post-separation abuse, where every thought you have, every action that you do, every word that you say, you have to process through, because if you take the wrong step, then you end up looking like the bad guy. If you say the wrong thing, now you're the controlling person. And it's so hard. It's so scary going into that world, having no person to fall back on, no information to fall back on for any sort of guidance. And I mean, there's stories throughout the world where parents, the actual victimized parent, is being removed from children's lives.
Yes.
Because they're coming in too hot, they're too emotional, because that's their kids. Their kids are being harmed. And yeah, to have a resource to help give you some guidance on what documentation you need, what to say, is so incredibly helpful and so life-changing.
That's absolutely the goal. And while you were, describing that, I was just imagining it. You were saying, people didn't ask for this. They don't want this. They didn't deserve it. They're not burning through some karma from another lifetime, right? And plenty of people listening probably actually think that that's true, which is totally fine. I've made many karma jokes, but it's a tornado that hits your house and turns it into toothpicks, right? But if a real tornado hits your house and turns it into toothpicks, you have insurance, your neighbors come over, they help clean up the mess. Somebody's responsible for helping you get that back together. And at a bare minimum, people feel sorry for you, right? In this hypothetical tornado, which is being the unwitting target of somebody's emotional, physical, psychological terrorism, right? And it's a person who was supposed to love you and help take care of you. You are like metaphorically in matchsticks, in toothpicks, but no one feels sorry for you. and no one is coming to help you, right? It is yours and yours alone, the burden to rebuild that house, to rebuild your life. And like you were saying, these protective parents are losing their children because they had the audacity to say he's abusive. He's hurting us. Please help us. He's doing things that shouldn't be allowed. Please help us. Because they had that audacity. They're having their children removed from their custody. So I'm imagining that they're trying to rebuild this house, and the big bad wolf just keeps coming over and blowing the dang thing down. It defies. People think we live in a generally safe world where if I need the system to protect me, it will. Like if there comes a day where I have to raise my hand and say, I'm being harmed, and I know that there are laws and expectations that should help me and support me, people believe that it will happen. They put their heads on their pillows at night believing that it will happen. And it's a lie. It is a lie. It's a lie we tell ourselves, people who've never been victimized. It's a lie that we say directly to people who've been victimized and who are crying and trying to tell us that it's not true, that we can't live our lives believing that thing's true and that it needs to be changed.
Absolutely. And, this is the scenario where people are raising their hands saying, I need help. I've been abused. Where then society, the legal system, and everyone looks at you and says, prove it. Mm-hmm. Prove it. Okay. Some people have bruises. Some people have broken bones. But even those individuals have a difficult time proving where they came from or prove that they didn't ask for it. They didn't do something. And this was just the retaliation. Of course, that happened to you because what did you do? Right. I mean, that's the thing. You're living in these matchsticks now and everyone's asking you, well, what did you do to bring the tornado to you?
Yes. Exactly. What did you do to bring this tornado? It is really hard to... Let's back up a little bit. It's concept of proof and truth. We are raised to tell the truth. The truth is really important. We're told that it's bad to lie. And we hold dearly to that truth. A lot of victims, I mean, their willingness to be like, but no, it was like this, is part of what keeps them entrapped in these relationships. It's the crowbar, right, that abusers used to distort people's sense of reality. Like, I believe that if I tell the truth, that will work. It turns out when two people are telling different truths, right, and one is of the kind of culturally dominant, if you will. I mean, speaking specifically to men, the kind of culturally dominant, and one is from the culturally non-dominant. Truth becomes a whole new thing. Truth is no longer the thing that we thought it was when we grew up. It was no longer what was, observable, documentable. It suddenly becomes a who has power in this particular relationship, who has power in this particular space, because that's the person who's going to be given preferential truth. So if I come in and I say, he pushed me down the stairs, and I have a picture of it, like I have a picture of the damage, all he has to do is say, this is what I'm talking about, Your Honor. It doesn't matter what I do. She fell down the stairs. I was there. I went to the bottom of the stairs to try to take care of her in that moment, and she slapped me away. But like, this is what I'm trying to tell you, is that she will falsely accuse me of anything. Okay, where is that truth now? And I'm sorry if anyone was listening and that was triggering. It was almost triggering for me to just say it out loud. What is true now? Because unfortunately, what is more likely to be true in that moment is that she will be stigmatized, she'll be victim blamed, or not even victim blamed, she will be institutionally gaslit, because we are, as a society, culturally, systemically, more likely to believe that the man was falsely accused than that he is a perpetrator. We're more likely to believe him. So what's true now?
Yes. And I have sort of along the same lines, but then I think we're both going on tangents, and that's fine. I am fired up. I am here for it. I was reading about parental alienation, and that's a big topic that I am very interested in, and I just can't soak in enough information about it. But there was a study, I think that was probably multiple studies actually, conducted all over the world, but this one happened to be in Canada. And what they were looking at is how it's more forgivable for a man to abuse his children, or even if it's not his children, abuse his partner in front of the children. There are children involved, whether active victims or passive, I suppose, watching. I can't think of the observational, whatever. My head is going way too fast from my mouth. So it's more forgivable for that man to abuse and say, oh, yeah, I did that, I'm so sorry, than it is for the mother to say, for the mother to have not immediately left, ran away with the children. Because then you're looked at, well, why did you keep them in that environment? You're not a great mom because you kept them in that environment. But yes, he did it. We know he did it, but he's sorry. But you kept
are
them
responsible for not protecting the children from this. Not that the perpetrator was responsible for not offending in front of the children or not offending. I mean, when we abuse the mother of the child, we abuse the children, right? We are abusing, yes. We are making weaker, harming the person who is their primary support system. And I would argue that the whole concept of exposure to abuse is really just, we're not that comfortable saying directly, if you abuse the mother of the children, you're abusing the children. You are absolutely right. That we are much more comfortable looking for accountability, if you will, in the underdog. We want to place accountability on the underdog, and we absolutely fail to see that the accountability, belongs to the perpetrator. And actually, this is something that I haven't talked about in a while, but that I think about a lot. It's somewhat spiritual almost. I'm going to stick it out there anyways. The universe demands accountability. When there is harm, there is accountability. I believe there's control over that harm, and I believe there's control over that accountability. But what ends up happening is one person causes harm, and that person doesn't want the accountability. So that accountability ends up absorbed by the victim, by the children, by other kind of peripheral things. And we have institutionalized that when exactly what you said happens. Well, he's caused this harm, and why didn't you leave and protect the children? He has caused the harm, and we have redistributed the accountability for that to the innocent, right? To the people who didn't make the choice to perpetrate, to offend, to cause harm. And we see that little story, vignette, if you will, played out in a billion different examples where I'm trying to think of another one, but there's just so many, it becomes a bottleneck in my brain. That the universe demands that accountability, and we are much more comfortable assigning that to the protective parent, to the person who isn't going to get outraged with us, than to the person it belongs to. And when we talk about alienation, so, I love the Joan Myers study. If a protective parent, typically the mother, and bears out in this study, comes forward and says he's abusive, there's child abuse, or God forbid, announcing that there was child sexual abuse, and then he says, "Well, she's alienating the children from me." Now, mind you, it is real likely that the children are not wanting to spend time with a scary parent who abuses them or abuses their primary attachment figure. But when that happens, we redistribute the blame, the accountability to that protective parent, because by saying, no, this is parental alienation, he's saying, I'm not willing to take accountability for it. And for some reason, we just are very comfortable. It happens under our noses without even us feeling like we are recognizing it or seeing it happening. We have landed squarely on the shoulders of the victim, of the person trying to create safety. Squarely on her shoulders now is the accountability for the harm that the perpetrator caused.
Yes. And, there's so many studies of how children benefit from having time with the mother and the father, but those are in stable home, amicable, cohesive co-parenting situations. There are not a lot of studies, if any, like true, really good studies showing what happens to the children when they have equal time with both parents if one of those parents is abusive. And maybe not even necessarily abusive to the children. And that's what the court looks at too, right? Well, they're not abusing the children. They were abusing you, not the children. But then you go into those, you see the same patterns happening, the same manipulation, the same emotional abuse, psychological abuse happening to the children, because now they're used as pawns to continue control over the victimized parent.
Yes. And two things can't be true. We can't say children, you across the board without caveat, are best served when they have unfettered frequent access to both parents. You cannot say that and assume that it holds true in the context of one of those parents being abusive, and also say child abuse increases your risk of an early death, right? We can look at adverse childhood experiences, and we know that if someone is a victim of child abuse, or if they are, and they use language like exposed to domestic violence, I think that's a little more separate than is a real true lived experience for children who live with an abusive parent. We can't say that both of those things are true. We know child abuse. We know that exposure to domestic violence literally takes years off of their lives. Like, I can't think of another way to say that it is harmful than to say it increases your risk of dying of cancer, right? We can't say both of those things are true. One of them can't be true. The protective parents have been screaming for that for a really long time. And yet that, presumption that equal access to parents, or at least frequent access to both parents, is what's best for the kids. I hear it, and I see a figurative fish slap me across the face. I'm just dumbfounded that people can hold those two things and not recognize the dissonance in it.
Right. And then you have the average person going into this whole system scared, emotionally traumatized, trying to navigate how to do all of this without any resources, without all of that data, without, maybe not even an attorney, or it's a court-appointed attorney who's just doing their, moving through the motions, not necessarily advocating for I'm not going to get into a lot of the legal stuff, because that's another tangent I'll go on, and I'm going to piss off people. And so I'm not going to do that. But you have all these individuals, and there's a lot of us. There are a lot. I mean, statistically, 1 in 3, but it's more. It's definitely more, because not all people have reported their abuse. It's not documented. So those statistics, I believe, are not even truly accurate. And so all of these people are going in, navigating, like I said, emotionally traumatized, feeling completely over their head and overwhelmed with everything. And then you have typically an abuser who is able to not feel any kind of empathy and go in, and they're calm and collected and well put together and well spoken and very, I didn't push her down the stairs. They have no problems lying.
Yeah. And they get to walk into what is arguably a really scary, overwhelming, tense, talking about going to court. Like, most people won't go to court, at any time in their lives. And we try to avoid it. We actively do whatever we can to make sure that we don't end up standing in front of a judge, unless, we have a hand behind somebody else who we're just there to support. And the victim does that in the context of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And being, triggered in that moment. And then the perpetrator gets to do that having little to no psychological impact of abuse, because it didn't happen to them. Right. So it's like letting someone go into a race totally prepared, on a full stomach, having everything that they could, all of the tools at their fingertips to be able to do it, and then sticking somebody else in that same race, with really terrible shin splints and both of their arms cut off. And oh, by the way, at the last minute, we might blindfold her and tell her that all the evidence she has isn't something she can submit anyways. we are systematically disadvantaging the person who needs the most from the system, who has the most to gain in terms of ethical, gains from the system. We disadvantage them from the outset, and that's just in the legal context. I mean, these people, these survivors, the victims, they're experiencing these same things when they go to work, when they try to find the right therapist, when they need a doctor who can understand them, and their experiences and how those might impact their current, mental and physical health. I don't know how else to describe it other than saying, you're asking this person to run a race without any of the faculties a person needs to be able to run the race.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're telling them it's their fault.
Right.
Yes.
I'm going to take everything away from you, tell you it's your fault, and say, fix this, prove it, fix it. And so, yeah, Aimee is a great tool to help anybody going into any of those situations. Like if you're in it, trying to figure out how to get out safely. That's number one priority is safety. And yeah, the aftermath is a truly new kind of hell. And I think that's something that will be incredibly helpful for individuals. You talked about gaslighting and gaslighting from the abuser, and then the systematic gaslighting. But then there was a topic that you and I were talking about, a term that was new to me. So what is it? Distorted nostalgia?
Yeah, distorted nostalgia. It's kind of this idea that, and it's definitely has a relationship with trauma bonding as well. Right. And that trauma bonding, like someone objectively from the outside of the relationship could be like, that's super not healthy. I'm not sure how you could possibly feel safe around that person. But the person in it, right, is in this kind of cyclical bond. And this distorted nostalgia is not totally dissimilar from that. It's that kind of looking back and finding things, remembering things as more positive than they were or more meaningful than they were. It's not entirely different from kind of euphoric recall where we completely, rewrite like it was the most amazing thing ever. But it is one of those things, especially shortly after, like when maybe in the first couple of years, sorry, but in the context of abuse recovery, a couple of years is considered short, that people find themselves revisiting. It's like, oh, well, I guess that was that positive thing. Right. And that was actually, it was really warm. It was really thoughtful, that thing that he did. And it is like an internal gaslight, right? Whereas if you really like kind of dissected that experience, it might be like, well, that was really wonderful. Well, he did like blow up on me on that vacation too. And actually I was feeling pretty timid and, embarrassed after that blow up. And when you really start digging at it, you can recognize the distortions and the nostalgic way that you look back on, a shared memory that you have with someone. So I guess, we put that out in our newsletter. It's good to have names for things that you might experience or might be confusing. And a lot of people they experience that. They look back and think like, oh, well, that was really wonderful. But with a little deeper thought, can start to see that the abuse was present in that in some way as well.
Yeah, and I think even just knowing that these terms exist is also validating in a way, because I know for myself, I've gone back and I've thought, well, did it really happen that way? Or was it not as bad as I thought? You know what? I don't think it was, because like that really nice thing happened before, that really nice thing happened after. So maybe that part in the middle wasn't as ugly as I thought it was. And yeah, it's that eternal gaslight where you're just constantly questioning, for a long time afterward of, did it really happen that way? Was it really abuse? And then you're like, wait, yeah, it was.
Yep. Was it really abuse? There isn't a survivor who didn't ask themselves that many, many times, and who might not still be, right? Asking themselves that. And it's normal for there to be positive times, right? Because if the person was horrible and scary and intimidating and belittling and degrading and, and all of the time, you probably wouldn't have stayed in that relationship. It's the back and forth. It's the hot and the cold. It's the reseeking of those positive times. So those positive times will exist. Retrospectively, with a lot of kind of building of understanding and educating yourself about your own experience, it's impossible to see those as distinctly separate from the bad times. right? Because the bad times play into the good times, play into the bad times. It's that loop that is so, it can be so intoxicating, which can really build so much of that trauma bonding. And make yourself your best gaslighter, right? You can gaslight yourself, even in the absence of it being done to you. That is a normal experience. That doesn't mean that the abuse didn't happen. It's really just kind of this weakness of our human psychology, and part of why we're vulnerable to these relationships to begin with.
Well, and I think journaling, which we kind of talked about that Aimee does, but like Aimee you can do journaling and keep a time. We did talk about the timeline. But yeah, you can enter those things in and just put them there. Like, oh, this happened and maybe it wasn't so bad, but just have it there. And then with the accumulation of information, you can go back, you can look and see it for yourself.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really effective kind of guidance point for people who especially have just left or are really questioning whether or not it was abusive. Just write down the things that happened, because it's really being able to see them in the totality that's so important. And with Aimee, like if you have a subscription, if you have an account, you just talk to Aimee. She's going to ask questions. Was there ever anything else that happened that was similar to that? You feel like you're just having this conversation, and she is extracting that information and putting it onto a timeline. You don't ever even have to look at it if you don't want to. Just knowing that it's there if you need it. But certainly people do. They'd like to go over it. They take a look and see the patterns, see how often certain types of things happened. And it really helps in those moments where your head is spinning and you're really not sure what direction's up, to see it right there, kind of, let's say, written in stone, but computers are literally the opposite of stone.
And so you mentioned, how many people has Aimee reached?
There's been like 40,000 people from over 150 countries that have talked to Aimee, which is just incredible. And there's 3 of us on the team. When we think about the scale and access and the role that technology like this, kind of digital health tools in general, have played in giving people access to their own experiences, helping people pair, really bringing together all of the incredible research and the body of knowledge right down to people's own experiences, right into their pockets. This is what digital health is, right? This is certainly what we're trying to build, and the scale is insane. This is an incredible time and opportunity to be building for what is one of the largest global public health issues that has never been addressed at scale ever before.
Yeah. And you guys didn't just create Aimee and then wash your hands of it. You're always going in and right?
Yeah, Aimee, it's kind of like laundry. You're never done, right? And as soon as you finish a load and you're like, oh, this new feature, we just finished a load. All of the other features that you want to build is a growing pile of laundry. Although it's a lot more fun to build in this space than laundry. And when you do your laundry, people don't send you emails of depths of gratitude. But if they did, that would make laundry a lot more fun.
Wouldn't it? I mean, my kids don't appreciate it. It's just magical to them. Okay. So how does somebody access Aimee?
Go to aimeesays.com, and it's AIMEE is how you spell her name. aimeesays.com. You can use it on your phone. It's mobile optimized. There's nothing that you have to download, which is great, especially if you need a lot of privacy and confidentiality around it right now. Those free conversations, have as many as you want. They're totally free. They disappear. If you need more, we are building for you, and we'd love for you to subscribe. It's $20 a month. You can get an annual subscription for less than a 30-minute phone call with an attorney. Aimee saves people insane amounts of money in utilizing much more expensive systems, or in making those systems more effective for them when they do need to utilize them.
And is there a quick exit feature?
Yes,
on Aimee?
There is a quick exit on both mobile. If you have any concerns about someone looking over the shoulder, do click that quick exit button. If you're having an anonymous chat, a free chat, it's entirely gone. It will just divert you away and log you out if you have an account.
Perfect. And is there a way, because I know you're constantly improving and adding, is there a way for anybody to give you feedback if they're using Aimee and they notice they do like something, they don't like something?
Yes, any of the support or feedback buttons or contact buttons, they come directly to my inbox. It's me that you're talking to, which is super fun. I want to stay as close to all of our users as possible. And we do. We hear all sorts of stuff. We hear from our users. If we have an AI partner that's down, we found out first because someone was like, hey, Aimee's not responding. There are our warning system, our alarm bells, and generate the entirety of all of the new concepts that we built. So please, yes, use those support and contact buttons, and it will go directly to me.
One of the other features we didn't talk about is that you can involve professionals in your profile, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So if you have an account, you can assign team members. So people will assign an attorney as a team member, and that means their attorney can come on, access it, grab the kinds of information that they need. Same thing with a therapist. If you're working with a DV advocate, same thing there. And one of the potential benefits of having any one of those three, because those all have confidentiality expectations, is the opportunity for potentially having additional confidentiality applied to your account in the event that an X is requesting for its contents and discovery. We haven't had that happen yet. I'm knocking on wood here. But we're doing everything that we can to keep those accounts as private and safe as possible.
Okay. And I can edit this out if we don't have an answer to it. I've heard of stories of where ChatGPT has given some very poor advice. I read an article, and I'll be honest, I did not fact check it. I saw it on Facebook, but where it said one of the other AI services recommended that a child end his life. And like I said, I don't know how true that situation was, but
it's true.
It is true.
And this is like a broader conversation. AIs are not flawless. They're not perfect. There is an expectation of responsibility on behalf of the user. As an informed user, as a user who is intending to derive benefit and support from that system. There are populations of people, children especially, being incredibly vulnerable to this, who won't always be able to exercise the degree of judgment that can keep them, like, it's like, if I'm driving a car, there's a risk of driving the car, right? I have to learn how to do that thing safely. Things come up. I need to make a judgment decision in that moment. And utilizing AI is not necessarily hugely different from that. It is very important to be an informed user of whatever tool it is that you're using. And there are they're true stories, and they're devastatingly sad stories of people who were engaging with an AI in a way that caused that AI to make statements or recommendations that were lethal, and instances where people did, in fact, take those recommendations. It's a difficult thing to solve for. It requires some redundancy in those systems to make sure that they are not saying things that could be construed as, or that are literally making recommendations that a person harm themselves. And also that is partly the use of the tool and how that's happening. So please use AI responsibly. If you're having a mental health crisis, an AI is not the tool for you. An AI is not a crisis response tool. But they're really good around those crises. I think it's really important to be an informed, educated utilizer of any tool that you're using.
And it also doesn't take the place of a therapist. I mean, it can help you go pro se, but actual therapist.
And it will, a good support system will absolutely improve your mental health. But a therapist is trained to make a diagnosis, for example, which is something that an AI can't do, to create a treatment plan, to monitor your progress along that treatment plan. I mean, there are specific things that a therapist can do that an AI can't. Now, does an AI provide legal benefit? Does it provide mental health benefit? I would say that it absolutely does. But there are areas of training that AIs can't provide, and partly because they can't make decisions on your behalf, and that we will continue to need people, real humans, to be able to do.
Which is comforting because I mean, we want humans around. Okay. Anne, is there anything we missed? I love this conversation, even though we did kind of go off a little bit, but that made it more exciting.
That makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
My life, what I have, to speak about is way more than what an AI can do. But it certainly makes me passionate about trying to solve the problem with technology. No, I think we did a good job. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Okay, I think so too. So before we close, do you have any parting words of strength or encouragement that you would like to leave with listeners?
How about the one I say a lot? This too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but this too shall pass.
Yeah, and some have one hell of a kidney stone, but yes.
Yes. Take care of yourself, love yourself. You're not alone in this, even though you feel, desperately alone. There is another side. And I wish I could hold hands with everybody who's in that traveling space, because it can be really dark and scary.
Yes, it can. And thank you so much, Anne. Thank you, Aimee, for being out there. But I really appreciate your time coming on today and the development of Aimee, which I think is going to be incredibly, incredibly helpful.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, for having me on and helping share what we're working on.
Thank you again, Anne, for joining me today, and thank you, Warriors, for listening. I've included the website Anne was referring to, as well as her 1 in 3 profile link in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode for you. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1in3podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.